They called her cursed, a child of the broken moon, sold for a handful of coins to the highest bidder. But when the chains closed around her wrists, he appeared. The White King of Shadows. The Alpha of the frozen north. The creature whispered about in every nightmare. He didn't buy her. He broke her chains. And with that single act, the girl the world despised became the one thing even monsters feared. The Moonborn Flame. This is not a love story, it's a prophecy reborn. Welcome to the Pale Curse and the Shadow King. Quick one before we begin, comment your country below, and let's see who's ready for this twist. The market smelled of smoke and frozen blood. Snow fell in thin white sheets, settling on the wooden stalls and the faces of people who turned to stare at me. Their breath misted in the cold, but their eyes were colder still. Mothers pulled their children close when I passed. Old men spat into the snow for luck. Some whispered prayers. Some cursed under their breath. I was used to it. They had always looked at me this way, as if I carried the sickness of the moon itself. My hair, white as salt. My skin, pale as milk. My eyes, strange and grey-blue, almost silver. In our village, such things were not beauty. They were omen. They called me moon-tainted. They said children like me were born under a broken sky, the mark of the gods' disgust. My mother told me once, if you had died as a baby, it would have been a mercy. I had believed her. Now, as I stood in the center of the market square, I realized mercy was not what my parents had in mind. My wrists were bound by iron chains that bit into my skin. The frost stung my bare feet as I stumbled forward. My father's voice rose above the murmuring crowd. She's strong enough to work, he said, puffing out his chest. A fine price for her age. Her looks, he paused, sneering. May not be pleasant, but her blood's clean. My mother stood beside him, eyes sharp, mouth tight. She didn't look at me. She never did. I swallowed hard. Father, please, I whispered, my voice cracking in the cold air. Don't do this. He didn't even glance my way. Quiet, girl, he hissed. You should be grateful someone wants you. The word someone echoed in my ears. I followed his gaze and saw him. He stood at the edge of the crowd, tall, still, wrapped in a cloak of white fur that shimmered faintly like frost beneath moonlight. The air around him seemed to bend, colder, heavier. Even the guards who stood nearby shifted uneasily, their breath clouding thickly before them. The man's face was hidden beneath the fur hood, but something about him made the crowd go silent. Children stopped crying. A dog whimpered and crawled under a cart. That's him, someone whispered. The Shadow King. A ripple of fear passed through the market. I had heard his name before, in the stories told to frighten children. They said he ruled the north beyond the mountains, a king not of men, but of monsters. They said his hair was the color of snow and his eyes gleamed silver under the moon. They said he drank the blood of his enemies and commanded wolves made of mist. Half vampire, half wolf, and all death. And now, he stood in front of me. My father, greedy even through his fear, forced a smile. My lord, this one is rare. Her kind don't live long. You'll not find another like her in 10 kingdoms. The priests say her blood is touched by the moon itself. The man's voice came low, smooth, and cold as wind over ice. Touched by the moon, he repeated softly. Is that what they call it now? My father chuckled nervously. A curse, my lord. But a pretty one. You could. The man raised a gloved hand and my father's words died mid-breath. The air itself seemed to freeze around that gesture. He stepped closer, each movement deliberate. His boots crunched on the frost. The white fur hood slipped back, and gasps rippled through the crowd. His hair fell loose, pure white, like fresh snow. His face was pale, sharp, and too perfect to be human. His eyes, gods, his eyes burned silver, molten and endless, as if the moon itself had taken form inside them. He stopped before me. The world went quiet. Look at me, he said. I tried to turn away, but his voice pulled at me like gravity. Slowly, I lifted my head and met his gaze. The moment our eyes locked, something inside me shifted, a strange weight pressing against my chest, as if the air between us had come alive. His stare wasn't cruel, nor kind. It was claiming. He studied me for what felt like an eternity, then spoke, voice like thunder wrapped in silk. "She is not for sale." The crowd gasped. My father's face went pale. "My lord, please." "We agreed." I said. The man repeated, softer but sharper, "She is not for sale." "But." The man's eyes flicked toward him, just one glance, and my father stumbled back as if struck. He clutched his chest, panting, color draining from his cheeks. The man turned back to me. Without a word, he reached out. His fingers brushed the iron around my wrist, and with a faint crack, the chain shattered, falling into the snow in pieces. The crowd gasped again. My wrists burned where the iron had bitten, purple and raw. He looked at the marks, his jaw tightening slightly, then lifted his gaze to mine. "They thought they could sell you," he murmured, voice low enough that only I heard it. "But you were never theirs to give." I stared at him, trembling. Who are you?" His silver eyes softened just slightly. "The one who has been waiting for you." Then he turned, draped his fur cloak around my shoulders, and said to the guards, "Prepare the sled." My parents stood frozen in the snow. My mother's lips trembled, but no sound came. My father reached for the fallen chains as if trying to grab back what he had lost, but his hands shook too much to hold them. I looked at them once, the people who had called me cursed, who had sold me to save themselves, and for the first time, I felt nothing. When the Shadow King looked back over his shoulder, his eyes met mine again. "Come," he said simply. "Or stay here where you are nothing." The choice wasn't real. It never had been. I stepped forward. The crowd parted without a word as he led me toward the edge of the square. Waiting there was no carriage, but a great silver sled drawn by wolves, enormous, white as glacier, eyes glowing blue. Their breath rose like fog, their fur glittering under the faint light. He helped me climb into the sled. His hand was cold, but steady. When he took the seat opposite mine, his presence filled the space like a storm waiting to break. The wolves lunged forward, the sled gliding across the frozen earth faster than any horse could run. The village disappeared behind us, swallowed by the snow and the dark. I sat in silence, my fingers clutching the fur cloak tight, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. Finally, I whispered, "Why me?" He didn't answer at first. The wind whipped his hair across his face, the silver of his eyes glinting faintly in the shadows. Then he said quietly, "Because the moon remembers her own." We rode through the night. The further we went, the colder the air grew. The trees thinned into white plains, and the sky stretched above us like black glass. The moon hung low, fractured, its broken edge glowing red. The sight of it made my stomach twist. No one spoke. The Shadow King sat across from me, silent, still as stone. His cloak, heavy with frost, barely moved in the wind. The wolves pulled us through the snow in perfect rhythm, their paws making no sound. I stole glances at him when I thought he wasn't looking. Everything about him felt wrong, not human, not creature, but something in between. His beauty was sharp, his silence too deep. The cold didn't touch him. Even the air seemed to bend around his presence. Finally, I gathered the courage to speak. "You never said your name." He didn't look up. "Names have power," he said quietly. "But you may call me Kale." "Kale," I repeated. The name felt heavy on my tongue. "Why did you save me?" His eyes flicked to mine, silver catching faint light. "Save you?" A faint smile ghosted across his lips. "Is that what you think I did?" My chest tightened. "You took me from them." "I took what was mine to take." My breath caught. "Yours? I don't even know you." "No," he said, voice soft but final. "But you will." We rode on in silence after that, the words hanging between us like smoke. When dawn touched the horizon, the forest ahead split open into a vast valley. I gasped. Before us rose a fortress of iced towers carved into the mountain itself, glowing faintly with blue light. Bridges of crystal arched high above the cliffs. Wolves patrolled the snowy paths, their eyes like shards of moonlight. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing I had ever seen. Kale's voice broke the silence. "Welcome to Irath Keep." The sled glided to a stop at the base of a wide staircase carved into the frozen stone. The wolves bowed their heads, Waiting. Kale stood and extended a hand to me. I hesitated. His hand was pale, strong, the veins faintly visible beneath translucent skin. It was the hand of a king or a monster. "Do you plan to stay there until you freeze?" he asked. My pride prickled. I placed my fingers in his. His skin was cold enough to sting, but he pulled me up effortlessly, guiding me toward the steps. The moment we crossed the threshold, the air changed. The cold dulled, replaced by a strange, humming warmth that came not from fire, but from the walls themselves. They gleamed faintly, veins of silver light pulsing within the ice. Servants appeared, men and women with pale skin and luminous eyes. They bowed deeply as Kale passed. Some looked at me in confusion, others with open fear. None dared speak. I whispered, "They're afraid of me." "They don't understand what you are," he said simply. I frowned. "What I am?" He didn't answer. We walked through long corridors lined with blue flames that burned without smoke. Every sound, my footsteps, my breath echoed like whispers. At last, we reached a massive set of doors carved with symbols that shimmered when Kale touched them. They swung open on their own. The room beyond was enormous, glowing faintly with soft white light. A round fire burned in the center, white, not orange, its flame silent but bright. The heat it gave off was gentle, like a heartbeat. "This will be your chamber," Kale said. I stepped inside, staring at the crystal walls that reflected my image in a dozen shimmering mirrors. I looked like a ghost. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why bring me here? What do you want from me?" Kale didn't move. He stood near the door, watching me quietly. "The truth," he said finally. "But not tonight." I turned to him. "Then what do I call you?" "My lord. My king." For the first time, his expression softened, almost a smile. "Kale is enough. And what am I to you?" He met my gaze, and the air between us seemed to tighten. "You are what I have been searching for." My heart stumbled. "You're mistaken. I'm no one. My parents said." "They lied." His voice was sharp now, not cruel, but fierce. "They called you cursed because they feared what they could not understand." I shook my head. "I'm not special. You are alive when you should not be. The moon does not mark mistakes." I took a shaky breath. "You speak in riddles." He stepped closer. "Then I'll speak plainly. The blood in your veins is older than your village, older than this world's sun. It sings to mine." I stumbled back, my pulse racing. "You're mad." "Perhaps," he said calmly. "But madness has its uses." He stopped before me, so close I could see the faint reflection of myself in his silver eyes. "Rest now, Lyra," he said softly, my name rolling from his lips like a promise. "Tomorrow, I will tell you what you are." Then he turned and left, the door closing behind him without a sound. For a long time, I stood alone in that glowing room, wrapped in his fur cloak, staring at the pale fire that burned without smoke. And though I told myself I should be afraid, I wasn't. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel cursed. I felt seen. The next morning came softly, the way dawn does when the sun doesn't truly rise. Light drifted through the crystal walls of my chamber, pale and shimmering, painting everything in blue and silver. For a moment, I thought I was still dreaming. The bed beneath me was softer than anything I'd known, the air filled with a faint hum that seemed to come from the stone itself. The cloak Kale had given me was still wrapped around my shoulders, heavy and warm. Its scent, cold air, pine, and something darker, clung to me. A soft knock broke the silence. The door opened before I could answer. A woman entered, tall, graceful, with skin like marble and eyes that glowed faintly gold. Her hair was braided with strands of frost that didn't melt. "My name is Sarah," she said. Her voice was smooth but cool, like the wind outside. "The king asked me to see to your needs." "The king?" I repeated, blinking the sleep from my eyes. "You mean Kale?" At the sound of his name without title, her expression flickered. Few speak his name so freely. I frowned. "Then why does he let me?" Sarah looked at me for a long moment before replying. "Because he is not like other kings when it comes to you." She left me to wash and dress, bringing me a gown of white silk that shimmered like snowlight. It was far too fine for someone like me, but she insisted. When I asked where I was, she only said, in the heart of the north, where the living seldom walk. After she left, I stepped toward the window. Below, the fortress stretched endlessly, bridges of glassy ice connecting towers that glowed faintly with blue fire. Wolves prowled the courtyards like silent sentinels. The horizon was nothing but frost and mountain. It was beautiful. Terrible, too. When Kale finally came, he entered without sound, the way wind slips through cracks in winter walls. "You're awake," he said. I turned quickly. He looked different in the light, less shadow, more silver. His hair caught the glow, his eyes burning bright even in calm. "I thought I dreamed all of this," I said. "The fortress. The wolves. You did not." He walked to the center of the room. The white fire in the hearth brightened as he passed. It responded to him, I realized, the way everything here did. He studied me silently for a moment. "You are not afraid." I was, I admitted. "But I don't think fear works the same here. Everything feels strange." "Strange can be truth in this place," he said. "Come." He turned and led me through winding halls, past columns carved from frozen stone, past windows that looked out into a world made entirely of winter. Wherever he walked, servants bowed. None dared meet his eyes. At last, we entered a vast hall. The floor shimmered with veins of silver, and at its center stood a great circular pool, its surface still and glassy. Pale light pulsed from beneath it, like a heartbeat. "What is this?" I whispered. Kale's gaze rested on the water. "The mirror of bloodlines," he said. "It shows what runs within you. I don't understand." "You will." He motioned for me to kneel beside it. "Look into the water." I hesitated, then obeyed. My reflection stared back, pale face, white hair, eyes like mist. Then the water shifted. Ripples formed, glowing faintly. My image blurred. Shapes appeared beneath the surface, silver threads twisting through darkness. They pulsed faintly, alive. "What is that?" "Your blood," Kale said quietly. "Not human. Not cursed. Marked by the moon itself." I shook my head. "That's impossible." "Is it?" He crouched beside me, his voice low. "Have you never wondered why no illness ever touched you? Why you walk barefoot in the snow and do not freeze? Why silver does not cut your skin as it does others?" My breath caught. I thought of all the times as a child when cold never bit me the way it bit others. How fire never burned. I'd thought it was luck. Kale's hand hovered near my wrist. "You are moonborn, Lyra." The word felt heavy, dangerous. "Moonborn?" He nodded. "A bloodline born from the broken light. When the gods split the moon, some of its power fell into mortal flesh. Few survived it. Those who did became something else, neither human nor divine. They were hunted, erased. Until none remained. Until me," I whispered. He met my gaze. "Until you." The water brightened, the threads of light within it swirling faster. I felt heat under my skin, spreading through my veins. The silver glow from the pool climbed up my reflection and into me. Pain flared. I gasped, clutching my wrist. A shape burned itself onto my skin, a crescent moon, faint and shining. "What's happening?" Kale's eyes gleamed. "Your blood remembers." I fell forward, dizzy. The hum in the air grew louder, like 1,000 whispers pressing against my ears. My breath came fast. Kale caught me before I fell fully, one cold hand on my shoulder. "Breathe," he murmured. "Let it settle." The pain faded slowly, leaving behind warmth that pulsed in time with my heartbeat. When I looked down, the mark still glowed faintly silver. I met his gaze. "What does this mean?" "It means," he said softly, "that you were never cursed. You were chosen." I wanted to believe him, but belief was a fragile thing. My whole life had been built on the lie that I was wrong. It was too much to change in a single breath. Kale stood, offering me his hand again. "Come. There is more for you to see." When I didn't move, he added, "You are safe here, Lyra. No one will touch you without my leave." I hesitated, then took his hand. His fingers were cold as ever, but the warmth from my own seemed to answer it, as if our touch completed some hidden pattern. And somewhere deep in the fortress, something howled, a long, low sound that shivered through the air. Kale's eyes flashed silver. "The wolves know," he said. "The Moonborn has returned." The days that followed blurred together like snow in wind. Kale gave me rooms lit by white fire that never went out. Servants bowed whenever I passed, though I saw fear in their eyes. Even the walls seemed to listen when I spoke, humming faintly in reply. Sarah brought me food I couldn't name, meats black as obsidian, fruits that glowed faintly blue. I asked once what they were. She said only, "Things that grow where light does not reach." At night, I dreamed of the broken moon. Each time, a voice whispered my name from the dark. Sometimes it was Kale's. Sometimes it was my own. When I woke, I always found him there. Sitting in the chair by the fire, silent, watchful. "You don't sleep," I said once. He looked at me. "I did, long ago." "You watch me instead." His expression didn't change. "The bond between us grows stronger. I need to be near when it settles." "The bond." He stood, the light catching his hair like frost on glass. "The mark ties us. When your blood awakened, it answered mine." I shivered. "You mean, I belong to you now?" His jaw tightened. "No. You belong to yourself. But our fates are no longer separate." I didn't know what that meant, but I felt it, the strange pull between us, like invisible threads tugging beneath my skin. When he left the room, the air seemed thinner. That evening, he brought me to another chamber deep within the fortress. The ceiling arched high, carved with constellations that glowed faintly. At its center burned a white flame in a bowl of stone. "This is the heart of Irath," Kale said. "Every ruler before me has drawn strength from this flame." I stared at it. "What does it do?" "It remembers," he said. "It burns with the lives of those who came before. It burns with prophecy." He turned to me, his silver eyes steady. "It will answer you now." "Answer me?" He nodded. "Hold out your hand." My pulse quickened. "Will it hurt?" "Yes." Before I could protest, he took my wrist gently and held it over the fire. I flinched as the flame licked my skin, but it didn't burn. Instead, a surge of light raced up my arm, silver and violet threads dancing beneath my skin. I gasped. What is it doing?" Kale's voice was low. "Showing you what you are." Visions burst behind my eyes, flashes of a moon whole and bright, of wolves howling in silver forests, of a woman with white hair kneeling beside a man who looked like Kale, pressing her hands to his chest as he bled silver light. "Who is she?" I whispered. His hand tightened slightly. "The one who came before you." I turned to him, breath shaking. "Before me?" He met my gaze, sorrow flickering across his face. "The first Moonborn. The one I failed to save." My heart thudded. "And now you think I'm her?" He didn't answer right away. "No," he said finally. "You are not her. But her fire lives again in you." The light in the flame dimmed. The visions faded. I pulled my hand back, trembling. "Why me?" I whispered. "Why not someone else?" Kale's eyes softened. "Because destiny is cruel in its precision." He turned from the fire, his voice quieter. "When the moon shattered, it cursed my kind to endless hunger and silence. Only the Moonborn's light could end it. For centuries, I waited. For lifetimes, I searched. When I felt your blood awaken, I knew the wait was over." I shook my head. "But I'm just a girl. I don't know anything about prophecy or curses or—" He cut me off, stepping closer. "Your blood carries the power to burn or heal my world. You may be afraid, but the moon does not choose wrong." The air between us crackled. I could feel the heat from his body though he radiated cold. "What if I choose wrong?" I whispered. "Then you destroy me," he said simply. I stared up at him. "And you're not afraid of that?" He smiled faintly, a sad curve of his lips. "I have lived too long to fear endings. Only beginnings frighten me now." The way he looked at me then made my breath catch. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to tilt, the fire flaring brighter, the air growing warmer. Then the moment broke. He stepped back, turning toward the door. "Tomorrow, You will face the council. They must see what the moon has returned. I frowned. They won't like me. No, he said. They won't. But they will obey. As he reached the doorway, I found myself asking, why did you wait for me, Kale? He paused, half in shadow, half in light. Because even the coldest heart remembers warmth, he said quietly. And I remembered you, long before you were born. When he left, I stood for a long time before the silent flame. My wrist still glowed faintly where the mark burned, and though I should have felt fear, all I could feel was the steady thrum of something new, power, alive and waiting, deep beneath my skin. Outside, the wind howled through the mountains, carrying with it a single long call from the wolves. And somewhere, faintly, the broken moon glowed red against the snow. It was as if the whole world was holding its breath for what came next. The great hall of Irath Keep shimmered like frozen starlight. Hundreds of candles burned inside glass orbs suspended from the ceiling. Pale flames danced in their centers, filling the hall with a ghostly glow. Long tables carved from crystal stretched the length of the room, laden with silver dishes that steamed faintly. Wolves carved in ice flanked the dais where Kale sat, his throne raised on a platform of pure frost. Sarah had spent an hour dressing me for the gathering. The gown she chose clung like water to my skin, white with threads of silver that caught every flicker of light. When I saw myself reflected in the mirror, I hardly recognized the pale figure staring back. Why do I have to go? I'd asked her. Because the court must see you, she replied. They will not accept what they do not witness. Now, standing just beyond the hall doors, I wished I had refused. The air was thick with voices, low, cold, inhuman. The sound of power murmuring to itself. When the doors opened, silence fell. Every face turned toward me. The nobles of Kale's court were not like men. They were too still, too perfect. Their skin gleamed faintly under the lights, their eyes glowing in shades of silver, gold, or red. Beauty sharpened by something cruel. I forced myself forward, each step echoing down the long marble floor. The sound was the only thing that proved I was still real. Kale watched me from his throne. He didn't smile, but his eyes, those endless silver eyes, softened slightly when they met mine. A tall woman with hair like white blue fire rose from the table. Her voice carried the weight of command. So this is she? Yes, Kale said. This human? I flinched. She is moonborn, Kale replied evenly. You will address her as such. The woman's lips curved. Forgive me, my king, but she looks mortal to me. Fragile. Soft. A flicker that will burn out before the next snow. I felt my chest tighten. Something hot stirred under my skin, anger, sharp and new. I didn't ask to be here, I said, before fear could silence me. I didn't ask for any of this. The hall went still again. The woman tilted her head. And yet you are. A guest in the Shadow King's hall. A danger to us all. Enough, Kale said, his voice low. She will not be questioned. But the woman's smile only widened. The prophecy returns, and you bring us a child who trembles under our gaze. Tell us, my king, does her power lie in her defiance, or merely in your pity? A murmur rippled through the court. I could feel their eyes slicing into me, dissecting me, measuring me against every fear they'd been taught to believe. Something inside me broke. I lifted my chin. If you're so afraid of me, I said, my voice steady now, perhaps that says more about you than it does about me. The woman's smile faded. Kale rose. The motion alone silenced every whisper. You forget yourselves, he said quietly, but his tone cut like a blade. You stand in the presence of the moonborn, the one the prophecy foretold. You will not speak against her again. For a heartbeat, I thought the ice on the walls might crack from the force of his words. No one dared reply. Kale turned to me. Come. I followed him out of the hall, my legs trembling, the weight of 100 gazes pressing against my back. The moment the doors closed behind us, I let out the breath I'd been holding. They hate me, I said. They fear you, he corrected. It feels the same. He looked down at me, something like amusement flickering behind his eyes. You faced them without flinching. Few ever have. That wasn't bravery, I muttered. It was anger. Anger, he said softly, is the beginning of power. We walked through the silent corridor until we reached the balcony that overlooked the frozen valley. The moon hung low, fractured and glowing faintly red. Kale stopped, his cloak catching the wind. "They will test you," he said. "They will try to make you doubt what you are." I stared at the snow far below. "And what am I, Kale?" He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "The end of an age or the beginning of another." His words should have frightened me. But as the wind tangled my hair and the moonlight burned white on his skin, all I felt was the pull between us, stronger now, humming like a thread of heat through the cold. When he turned to leave, I caught his sleeve. "Why protect me?" He looked at my hand, then at me. "Because the world has hunted your kind for too long," he said. "And because I will not lose you again." "Again?" I whispered. But he was already gone. That night, I could not sleep. The mark on my wrist glowed faintly, a soft silver light pulsing in time with my heartbeat. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it thrum like something alive beneath my skin. I rose and stood before the fire. The white flames whispered softly, their light spilling across the glassy floor. The air shimmered faintly, and for a moment I thought I saw movement in the reflection. Then everything went black. The world around me shifted. I stood barefoot in snow. The forest stretched in every direction, its trees tall and white as bone. The sky above was dark, split by the shattered moon. One half glowed silver, the other burned red. I shivered. "Kale!" A sound broke the silence, a voice, deep and broken. I turned and saw him kneeling in the snow. His cloak was torn, his hands covered in blood. He cradled a woman in his arms. Her hair was pale like mine, her skin marked with the same crescent moon that burned on my wrist. "No," he whispered. "Stay with me." The woman's eyes fluttered open. She reached up, her fingers trembling as they touched his face. "It wasn't your fault." Kale shook his head. "I was meant to protect you." She smiled faintly. "You will. Another life. Another time." Then she was gone. The light in her eyes faded, her body dissolving into silver mist. Kale bowed his head, his voice breaking. "I will find you. I swear it." The scene blurred, dissolving like snow under sunlight. I gasped and stumbled backward, only I wasn't in the forest anymore. I was in a hall of ice, the same throne room I had seen before. Kale sat alone on his throne, his face empty, his eyes dull. Around him stood shadows whispering words I couldn't hear. When I took a step forward, his head lifted slowly. Our eyes met. "Lyra," he said. My heart stopped. He could see me. But then his voice deepened, echoing with something older, something not entirely his own. "No, not Lyra. Vera." The name struck through me like lightning. The air trembled. "Who is that?" I whispered. "You are," he said. The ice cracked beneath my feet. The hall split apart. Light poured through the cracks. I woke with a gasp, the sound of my own name, no, her name, still ringing in my ears. The fire still burned. But I wasn't alone. Kale stood in the corner, his gaze fixed on me. "You saw it," he said. My breath came fast. The woman in the snow. The one who looked like me. Who was she? He stepped closer, the firelight catching in his eyes. "She was the first moonborn. The one the moon gave to me. And she died." "Yes." His voice was soft, raw. "Because I could not protect her." "And you think I'm her?" He didn't answer immediately. "I think the moon has strange ways of returning what was lost." I shook my head. "That's impossible." Kale's expression tightened. "You saw her death as I did. You felt it. You cannot deny what your blood remembers." I stood, my legs shaking. "I'm not her," I said, the words cracking. "I'm not." "Perhaps not," he said quietly. "But her light burns in you. The bond that tied us once has found its way back." He reached out and brushed his fingers along my jaw. The touch was light, but it silenced me. "I waited centuries for that light to return," he whispered. "Do you understand what that means, Lyra?" I swallowed hard. "No. It means you are mine," he said, voice trembling on the edge between vow and curse. The mark on my wrist flared, answering his words with heat that seared and soothed all at once. I should have pulled away, but I didn't. For a long moment, the world was just that: his eyes, the fire, the sound of our hearts beating the same rhythm. Then I whispered, "And if I don't want to belong to anyone?" His gaze darkened, but not with anger. "Then you will have to teach the moon to change its will." He turned to leave, his cloak sweeping across the floor. Before he reached the door, I found my voice again. "What was her name?" I asked softly. "The first one." He paused. "Vera." The name tasted strange on my tongue. When the door closed, I looked down at my wrist. The mark still glowed, faint and pulsing. Outside, the wind howled, and somewhere deep in the fortress, wolves began to sing. I couldn't tell if they were mourning or calling something home. Snow fell in thin ribbons outside the high windows, twisting in the wind like strands of silk. The morning light filtering through them was silver, not gold, and it filled the training hall with a chill brightness that stung my eyes. Cale stood across from me, his cloak discarded, his white shirt unbuttoned at the throat. He moved with the quiet ease of a predator, his steps barely whispering against the stone floor. The sword he held glinted faintly, as though it too breathed with the cold. I had never seen him this close without the layers of armor or fur that marked him as a king. He looked dangerous, sharper, somehow. Alive. "Focus," he said softly. "I'm trying." "Trying is not enough. You cannot control what you will not face." I clenched my fists. The silver mark on my wrist burned faintly. I could feel the hum beneath my skin, the quiet pressure of something wanting to burst free. "What if I hurt someone?" "Then I'll stop you." "You sound so sure." "I am." He moved forward and stopped a few feet away, the pale fire in the sconces reflecting in his eyes. When the moon-born blood awakens, the fire must be taught to listen. It will answer your fear first, and your will second. You must reverse that order. "I don't know how." "You will learn." He raised his hand, and from the air itself, frost gathered, forming a sphere of ice in his palm. It hovered there, spinning slowly. "Destroy it." "I can't." "You can." I swallowed. The mark on my wrist throbbed harder. My veins glowed faintly, silver running beneath my skin like liquid light. I lifted my hand and focused. Nothing happened. Cale tilted his head. "Stop thinking. Feel." I glared at him. "That's not very helpful advice." He smiled slightly, an expression so rare it startled me. "It was not meant to be." I exhaled, closing my eyes. I tried to find the hum again, that soft, distant pulse deep inside. It felt like standing on the edge of a storm. When I reached for it, the power rushed up so fast it stole my breath. The sphere of ice exploded into 1,000 shards. I gasped and stumbled backward, fire streaking across my vision. The walls shivered, light flaring. Cale was suddenly there, catching me by the shoulders. His hands were cold, but his grip was steady. "Too fast," he murmured. "You called too much." "I didn't mean to." He lifted his hand and brushed a strand of hair from my face. "You meant to try." "That's enough." I looked down. The floor around us was cracked, the frost melted into steam. "Did I do that?" "Yes." "Did I hurt you?" "No." His eyes held mine. "You cannot hurt me unless you mean to." Something unspoken lingered between us, fear, yes, but something else too. The mark on my wrist pulsed again, and I saw the same faint light flicker in his eyes, as if the bond itself recognized its twin. He stepped back and gestured to the white flame that burned near the far wall. Again. Hours passed. Each time, the control came easier. The light in my veins obeyed me, bending when I willed it to. Cale watched in silence, his expression unreadable, but every now and then, I caught something like pride in the tilt of his mouth. When the sun began to fade behind the mountains, he said quietly, "Enough for today." I sank to the floor, panting. "Do you train all your prisoners this hard?" "You are not a prisoner." "Then what am I?" He hesitated. "Necessary." "For what?" His gaze softened. "For balance." He turned to leave, but before he reached the door, I said, "When I use it, the fire, it feels like it's not just mine. Like it's remembering something." He looked back over his shoulder. It remembers what your soul forgot. I frowned. That doesn't make sense. It will. Later that night, after he left, I sat by the window watching the snow swirl in the darkness. My skin still glowed faintly beneath the thin linen of my gown. I lifted my hand, tracing the crescent mark, and whispered into the cold glass, "What are you turning me into?" The wind didn't answer. But somewhere far below, the wolves howled again, and I could have sworn I heard his voice beneath theirs. The peace of Irath broke 3 days later. It began as a tremor in the walls, a faint vibration that ran through the ice floors and up the pillars. I felt it even in my bones, a wrongness, sharp and cold. I was in the training hall again when Sarah burst through the doors, her golden eyes wide. "They're here," she said. Cale looked up from where he stood by the window. "How many?" "Dozens. Maybe more. They carry silver and sunfire." He cursed under his breath and turned to me. "Hunters." The word sent a chill through me. "Hunters." I repeated. "They kill what they don't understand," Sarah said. "And they understand nothing about you." Cale's eyes locked on mine. "You will stay in your chambers. Do you understand?" "No. Lyra. I'm not hiding while others die for me," I said, my voice trembling. "This is not your fight." "They came for me," I snapped. "That makes it my fight." His jaw tightened, silver eyes flashing. "You think your power will save you? It isn't ready. You'll burn yourself before you burn them." "Then teach me how to burn right now." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned sharply to Sarah. "Prepare the walls. Signal the wolves. Keep her safe." He was gone before I could speak again. From the balcony outside my chamber, I saw the first line of them appear through the snow, figures cloaked in black, their armor gleaming faintly. Each carried a weapon etched with glowing runes, the light of them sickly yellow. They looked like ghosts given purpose. At their head rode a man in a crimson cloak, his face hidden behind a mask of steel. When he lifted his hand, the sky darkened further. Cale stood on the fortress wall, his presence unmistakable, his cloak whipping in the wind. His army assembled behind him, vampires and wolves alike, pale and silent. I pressed my hand against the window. The air hummed, the bond inside me tightening painfully. Then it began. The first explosion hit the outer gate. Light flared. The sound was deafening. Cale raised his hand and the snow itself rose to meet the attack, freezing the flames midair. The clash that followed was chaos and beauty together, shadows and light, fire and frost colliding. I couldn't stay. The mark on my wrist pulsed like a heartbeat, pulling me toward the battle. I ran through the corridor, ignoring Sarah's shouts behind me. My feet barely made a sound on the glassy floor. When I reached the outer balcony, the full scope of the battle spread below. The hunters were climbing the walls, their weapons glowing brighter with every swing. Cale moved among them like a storm, his blade a streak of white, his eyes burning silver fire. The sight of him filled me with both terror and awe. Then one of the hunters saw me. He shouted, pointing his blade upward. "There. The girl." I stepped back. Too late. A burst of light exploded against the balcony rail, shattering it. I screamed as the stone crumbled beneath me. The fall wasn't long, but the shock of it knocked the air from my lungs. I landed in the snow, my arm searing with pain. The hunters turned. "There she is." I stumbled to my knees. My body trembled, every instinct screaming to run, but something else rose up, hot, relentless, burning. The fire. The nearest hunter lunged. His blade arced through the air toward me. I lifted my hands without thinking. Light burst from my palms, white, blinding, pure. It struck him square in the chest, hurling him backward. The runes on his sword shattered. He didn't rise again. The others froze. Even Cale stopped, turning toward me. The snow hissed where the light had touched it, steam curling upward. My hands shook, smoke rising from my skin, though I felt no pain. Cale moved instantly, reaching me in seconds. He caught my shoulders, his grip firm. "Lyra," he said, voice rough. "What did you do?" "I don't know," I whispered. He looked down at my hands, the faint white glow still pulsing beneath my skin. "Your fire has awakened." A hunter's shout split the moment. Kale turned, drawing his sword again. The air rippled as his power surged outward, freezing the snow into a wall of ice that rose between us and the attackers. "Stay behind me," he commanded. But I couldn't. The fire inside me felt alive, hungry, aware. It pushed at my veins, begged to be released. Kale's blade clashed with a silver axe. Sparks flew. A hunter lunged at his back. Without thinking, I thrust out my hand. The light roared again, engulfing the man in white fire. He fell before he could scream. Kale froze, glancing back at me. The bond between us surged so violently it hurt. I could feel his heartbeat inside mine, his power brushing against the edge of my fire. "Enough," he said, his voice shaking. "You'll burn yourself." "I'm fine." "You're not." He caught my wrist, his hand closing over the mark. The light dimmed instantly, snuffed out like a candle. The silence that followed was heavy. Around us, the hunters retreated, dragging their fallen. The snow was scorched black where the light had struck. Kale's soldiers began to regroup, their victory cries echoing through the valley. But Kale didn't move. He was still holding my wrist, his eyes wide, not with fear, but something else. "Reverence. Your fire," he whispered. "It's not only moonborn, it's the pure flame. The kind that can destroy my kind." My throat tightened. "Then why didn't it destroy you?" His voice was barely audible. "Because you didn't want it to." We stood like that for a long moment, the wind carrying the smell of burned snow and steel. Then he released me slowly, as though afraid to break something fragile. The mark on my wrist still glowed faintly. He said softly, "You've changed everything." I didn't know whether that was a promise or a warning. That night, the fortress was quiet again, but I could still feel the echo of the fire in my veins, restless, waiting. When I closed my eyes, the last thing I remembered was Kale's voice in the courtyard, carried on the wind. "You are not cursed, Lyra," he'd said. "You are what the world has forgotten, fire born of the moon." And somewhere deep inside, I began to believe him. The victory in the snow should have brought calm, but it didn't. The fortress had gone still in a way that didn't feel like peace. It felt like something waiting to snap. Kale's soldiers repaired the outer walls. The wolves patrolled the frozen ridges, their howls echoing through the white valleys. Yet even as the ice gleamed under the broken moon, I could feel the fear crawling beneath it. Word of what I had done of the white fire had spread through Irath like smoke. The servants who once bowed when I passed now stepped aside quickly, as if the air around me might burn them. Sarah brought me food but didn't meet my eyes. "They whisper you will end him," she said once, voice tight. I stared at the untouched bowl before me. "And what do you believe?" Her silence was answer enough. When Kale called me to the council chamber, I already knew something was wrong. The guards at the door didn't bow as I passed. Their hands lingered too long on the hilts of their swords. Inside, the hall was colder than usual. 12 figures sat around a round table carved from black ice. At its head stood Kale, his posture tense, his silver gaze cutting across the room. The same white-haired woman who had insulted me during the banquet, Lady Varn, rose to her feet. "My king," she began, her tone smooth, "forgive our bluntness, but this cannot continue. The Moonborn has revealed her power, and now we see what she truly is." Kale's voice was quiet. "And what is that, Lady Varn?" "Destruction," she said simply. "You saw the fire. It burns silver steel, devours runelight. It is the same power that destroyed your ancestors when the moon first broke. You shelter her, but she is the death of our kind." Murmurs rippled through the council. Kale's jaw tightened. "She is not your enemy." Another man stood, a tall vampire with golden eyes like molten coin. "You can't know that. She is still mortal, untested, unbound. If the bond fails, her power will consume her and you. Do you mean to drag us into your ruin?" I felt the heat rising in my chest. "I didn't ask for this," I said. The golden-eyed man turned to me sharply. "And yet you brought it." Kale's power flared in the air, invisible but heavy enough to silence the room. "You will not speak to her that way." Varen's smile was cold. "You protect her as if she were your queen, but she is the weapon that will end you. If the stories are true, her fire unravels your kind. Will you test that yourself? Kale's gaze turned to steel. If that is what it takes. The council gasped. Varen's voice rose. Then you are already lost. Before anyone could speak again, the chamber doors slammed open. A gust of cold wind blew through, carrying the scent of blood and snow. A figure stepped inside, a man cloaked in shadow, his hair black as the void, his eyes glowing the same silver as Kale's. Every vampire in the room went still. Kale's hand dropped to his sword. Rail. The newcomer smiled faintly. Brother. The word hit me like ice. They looked alike, but where Kale's presence felt like cold tempered by light, Rail's felt like the hollow that comes after fire dies. He carried darkness in the curl of his smile. You should be dead, Kale said. Many things that should be dead still walk, Rail replied. You taught me that. The council rose, their fear plain. I have come with a gift, Rail said, stepping forward. Or perhaps a choice. His gaze slid to me. The girl. The moonborn. I met his stare. There was something ancient and cruel behind his eyes, but also fascination. You're the brother he never spoke of, I said. He smiled wider. And you are the curse he cannot let go. Kale moved between us. You will not touch her. I don't need to, Rail said. I only came to tell you what you already suspect. Her fire is your undoing. The prophecy said it clearly. When the pale flame meets the White King, the night will end. Varen's eyes widened. The end of night, our end. Kale's voice hardened. The prophecy also says the bond will restore the world. You forget that part. Rail's laugh was soft and terrible. Restore it to what? To warmth. To mortality. To death. He turned to me again. Tell me, little moonborn, do you truly think you were meant to save him? You are his punishment, not his salvation. The words cut deep, sharper than I wanted to admit. Kale drew his sword. Leave, Rail. I will, he said, but not far. The gods have set the pieces. The next move is yours. He disappeared into mist, his laughter echoing down the hall. When the silence returned, the council turned on Kale. You heard him, Varen said. The bond will destroy us all. End this before it's too late. Kale looked at me, then back to them. No. Then we will, she hissed. The council rose and swept out of the room, their footsteps like knives in the silence. I turned to Kale. She means to kill me. I know. And you're letting her walk free? She will come to us. Let her think she holds the blade. I stared at him. You're not afraid. His gaze softened slightly. I am terrified. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, the snow beyond glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. My mark pulsed in time with the beat of the fortress itself. Kale entered quietly. He didn't speak at first, only watched the sky. Rail was right, wasn't he? I said. My power can destroy you. He turned to me. Yes. Then why keep me here? He took a long breath. Because I would rather stand beside the flame that might end me than in the dark without it. Kale. He stepped closer, his voice softer. Do not let their fear define you. You are not what they call you. And if I am? He smiled faintly. Then I will burn gladly. The next morning dawned grey. The fortress groaned under the weight of the storm that rolled in from the north. The walls trembled, but it wasn't the wind. I found Sarah waiting in the corridor, her face pale. The council has called for you. My stomach sank. Why? They claim they wish to test the prophecy. When I entered the great hall, Kale was already there, his sword at his side, his expression cold. The council stood in a semicircle behind the black ice table. Varen smiled when she saw me. Moonborn, she said. We wish to confirm the bond. I frowned. How? She gestured toward the center of the hall, where a tall pillar of crystal stood. Within it swirled a faint blue light. The Echo Stone, she said. It reveals the truth of what ties one soul to another. If the bond between you and our king is real, it will show it. If not, she let the word hang like frost. Kale's hand brushed my arm lightly. You don't have to. I do, I whispered. I stepped forward. The stone hummed softly. I placed my hand on its surface. The mark on my wrist flared instantly. The light inside the crystal turned white, then gold, then silver. It brightened until I had to shield my eyes. When the glow faded, images swirled within the stone, two figures bound by a thread of light, a moon breaking, shadows falling, and then fire bursting from the crack to consume everything. Varen's face twisted in triumph. You see, it ends in ruin. Kale's voice boomed through the hall. No, it ends in rebirth. But even as he spoke, the image shifted again. The two figures merged into one blinding form, then vanished, leaving only flame. Silence fell. The prophecy is broken, Varen whispered. It was never meant to bind again. Rael's voice came from the doorway. Because it can't. Kale spun. You dare return? I never left, Rael said, stepping into the hall. His presence filled the air like poison. You cling to old myths, brother. The moon does not bless, it consumes. Every era must end for another to begin. He raised his hand. The blue veins in the walls turned black. The air stank of smoke. And this one ends tonight. Kale's blade was in his hand before I saw him move. Their swords met in a flash of white and red light. The sound was deafening. The council scattered, their composure shattered. I stumbled back, the pulse in my wrist burning so hot it hurt. Every strike between them echoed inside me, as though my heart beat with theirs. Rael's laugh filled the hall. Feel it, brother? Her power runs through you. Every drop of your strength feeds her fire. Kale's sword caught his shoulder. Blood spilled, black and smoking. I will not let you have her, Kale said. Rael snarled. Then watch her burn. He flung his hand toward me. The floor cracked. A spear of shadow shot from the ground, heading straight for my chest. I threw up my hands instinctively. The world exploded in white light. When it cleared, the entire hall had changed. The walls were covered in frost, the ceiling fractured. Rael stood frozen mid-strike, his arm turned to glass. Kale rushed to me. Lyra. I was trembling, smoke rising from my palms. What did I do? You stopped him. He's not dead. No, Kale's voice was grim. But he will not rest until you are. Rael's voice cracked through the frozen air, muffled by ice. You think you can hide her forever? The bond will burn you both. Kale's hand found mine. Then let it. He pulled me close, his breath cold against my ear. Do you understand now why you matter? Tears burned behind my eyes. Because I can kill you. He shook his head. Because you can save me. The ice around Rael began to splinter. Kale sheathed his sword and lifted me into his arms. We have to leave. Leave. The fortress won't hold. The prophecy has been invoked. The fire will draw every shadow in this realm. As he carried me through the collapsing halls, I saw the crystal walls cracking, the blue flames turning white. The entire mountain seemed to pulse with the rhythm of my heartbeat. When we reached the outer gate, he set me down. The snowstorm had grown into a blizzard, but through the howling wind, I heard the wolves calling again, closer this time. Kale turned to me, his eyes glowing brighter than the moon above. The bond is complete, Lyra. Whatever comes next, we face it together. I looked at him, at the man who had once been legend and now was only flesh and shadow and devotion. The wind howled. The storm swallowed us whole. Somewhere in the heart of the tempest, the moon split open wider, and the world began to change. The storm did not end for 3 days. The wind screamed across the mountains, ripping at the towers of Irath until the ice itself seemed to weep. The once blue walls had turned white, streaked with veins of shadow that pulsed like living wounds. The veil, the barrier between this realm and what lay beneath it, was thinning. Kale knew it. I could see it in the hard set of his jaw, the way his eyes flicked constantly to the sky, to the cracks of light that ran through the clouds like bleeding veins. We had taken refuge in the lower halls, where the wolves kept guard at the doors. I hadn't slept since the night Rael attacked. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that flash of white fire and the way his body had turned to ice. Kale stood at the window slit, his cloak snapping in the cold wind that forced its way through. The storm isn't natural, he said quietly. It's him. Rael is calling on the old gods. He's forcing the veil open. The veil? I asked. He turned. It's what keeps the living realm apart from the hollow, the place the gods sealed after the moon broke. If it opens fully, everything will bleed together: life, death, shadow. Nothing will survive it. And he can do that. He already has. I stared at the frost-covered floor, heart pounding. Then what do we do? Cale's expression was unreadable. We stop him. Before I could speak again, the doors slammed open. Sarah entered, her braids tangled, her eyes bright with panic. The eastern tower has fallen, she said. The veil has torn there, the shadows are seeping through. The dead walk. Cale's face went still. Get the wolves to the lower gate. Hold them there as long as you can. And you. He looked at me. We end this. The air outside was unbearable, so thick with snow and ash that each breath burned. The mountains groaned beneath our feet as Cale led the way toward the eastern tower, his sword drawn, the blade pulsing with faint light. Everywhere I looked, the world twisted. The snow bled black where the shadows touched it. Shapes moved in the blizzard, bodies that looked half human, half mist, their eyes hollow light. They screamed when Cale's fire touched them, dissolving into smoke. What are they? I shouted over the wind. Souls lost between realms, he said. Rael is using them to keep the veil open. We reached the ruins of the tower. Its top was gone, ripped away as if by a giant's hand. Above it, the sky swirled like a wound. A gash of pure darkness split the clouds, light spilling from within that wasn't light at all, white fire and shadow mixed, flickering as if alive. Through it, I could hear whispers. Words I didn't understand. But they knew my name. Lyra. The voice was soft, almost tender. It sounded like mine. Cale grabbed my arm. Don't listen. Whatever you hear, it isn't real. But it felt real. The voice in the darkness was warm, comforting, familiar. It called again, coaxing, gentle. You're the key. Only you can close it. Come closer. The closer I stepped toward the torn sky, the hotter my mark burned. I felt Cale's power brush against mine, sharp and cold, holding me back. Cale, I gasped, it's calling me. He pulled me against him, his breath cold on my neck. I know. Then another voice rose from the storm, deep and cruel. Let her come, brother. The moon chose her for this. You can't protect her from what she is. Rael emerged from the shadow, his eyes glowing like coals under ice. His body still bore the cracks of frost from where I had frozen him, but he moved easily, his smile calm. You shouldn't be alive, Cale said. Alive, dead, it's all the same when the veil falls. He turned to me. Do you see it, Lyra? The tear. That's where your kind came from. That's where you belong. Close it, and you'll die. Keep it open, and you'll live forever with me. Don't listen, Cale said again, stepping in front of me. Rael's grin widened. Always the same. You pretend to guard her, but you want the same thing I do, to possess her fire. Cale's sword flashed. Enough. The brothers collided. Light burst between them, white and black, throwing snow and shards of stone into the air. I could feel the impact in my chest. Their blades clashed, again and again, each strike echoing like thunder. The voice in the veil grew louder. Lyra, help us. Free us. I couldn't look away. The tear in the sky was growing wider, dragging at the air itself. Every breath felt heavier. The world tilted. Cale shouted something, I didn't hear what. I only saw Rael drive his blade through his brother's chest. Cale. I ran forward, the fire in my veins igniting in panic. The world exploded in light. The shadow around us shattered. When it cleared, Rael stood on one knee, his sword half melted. Cale staggered but stayed on his feet, blood bright against the snow. I caught him as he fell to one knee. You're hurt. It's nothing, he said through his teeth. Rael's voice cut through the storm. It's too late, brother. Look. The veil had fully torn open. From it spilled an endless tide of light and shadow intertwined, souls screaming, falling, rising. It was beautiful in the way death might be beautiful, terrible, unstoppable. Cale looked at me. It will consume everything. What do we do? His hand found mine, pressing it against his heart. We close it. Together. How? Your fire. My shadow. One cannot exist without the other. That will kill you. He smiled faintly. Maybe. But it will save you. I shook my head. I'm not losing you. Lyra, he said, his voice a whisper of steel and sorrow. You are the light I waited lifetimes for. If this is the end, let it end in your hands. Rael laughed. How poetic. You'll die by her, just as before. Kale turned toward him, his eyes burning bright. Perhaps. But not this time. He pressed his forehead to mine. The mark on my wrist flared so brightly it hurt to look at. Our power surged together, his cold shadow, my white fire, twisting, merging, becoming something entirely new. The world stopped. We rose from the ground, light spilling from our joined hands. The wind screamed. The veil shrieked like a living thing. The rift began to close, the torn edges knitting together with fire and frost. Rael lunged, shouting, but the power between us struck him mid-step. He disintegrated into shadow and snow. The veil sealed with a sound like a sigh. Then everything went dark. I woke to silence. The storm had ended. The sky above was clear for the first time since I could remember, the moon whole again, but faint, its light dimmer, as if exhausted by what had happened. I lay in the snow beside the ruins of the tower. Kale's cloak covered me, heavy and cold. For a heartbeat, I thought he was beside me. But when I turned, he wasn't there. Kale. My voice cracked. Nothing. The wind whispered through the empty arches. The wolves were gone. The fortress was still. I pushed myself up, trembling. The snow beneath me shimmered faintly with silver light. My wrist still bore the mark, but it was brighter now, two crescents overlapping, one black, one white. Then I saw him. He was lying a few feet away, half buried in snow, his eyes closed, his chest still. I crawled to him, panic clawing at my throat. Kale. I shook his shoulder. Wake up. Please. No answer. Tears blurred my vision. I pressed my hand against his chest. You promised, I whispered. You said we'd face it together. The snow around us glowed faintly, responding to my power. I could feel the bond still there, a faint pulse deep beneath his skin. But it was fading, slipping away. No, I said. You're not leaving me again. I placed my palm over his heart and let the fire rise. It burned through me, white and wild, spilling into him. The mark on my wrist blazed so bright it blinded me. Kale's body arched, a gasp escaping his lips. His eyes opened, silver and gold and shadow all at once. Lyra. Relief and pain flooded me at once. You're alive. He sat up slowly, his breath visible in the cold air. Alive is not the word I'd use. What do you mean? He looked down at his hands. The veins beneath his skin glowed faintly, the same color as my mark. Your fire changed me. I healed you. No, he said softly. You remade me. Before I could reply, the ground trembled again, faintly. The veil was gone, but the energy it released still lingered, moving like waves beneath the surface of the world. What happens now? I asked. He looked up at the moon, its light washing over us. The gods will see this as a new beginning. But the balance we broke won't forget. I shivered. So it's not over. Not yet. But it's different now. He reached for my hand, his fingers cool against my skin. The bond is complete. Your fire and my shadow are one. Whatever comes, we face it as one. I wanted to believe that. But deep inside, I could feel something else, his heartbeat echoing within mine, too slow, too heavy. A part of him was still fading, still giving itself to the fire. Kale, I whispered, if I burn too bright. Then I will be the darkness that holds you. He pulled me close, his forehead resting against mine. The cold of his skin and the warmth of mine met perfectly, neither winning, neither losing. The first rays of dawn spilled across the snow, soft and gold. You said once you feared beginnings, I murmured. He smiled faintly. And here we are, at another. The silence that followed was peaceful. The fortress shimmered in the morning light, no longer blue but pale gold, like glass touched by flame. As the sun rose higher, I could almost believe the world had been cleansed. But when I looked down at the snow, I saw where our power had merged. Two shadows, one of frost, one of fire, lay side by side, perfectly still. And beneath the quiet beauty of the new dawn, something deep in the earth stirred. The days after the storm blurred together. Irath lay in ruin, half of its towers collapsed and its courtyards drowned in silver frost. The great hall that once shimmered with blue fire now stood hollow, open to the endless sky. Snow drifted through its broken ceiling like falling ash. I spent those first mornings searching for survivors. A few wolves still roamed, silent and loyal, their fur streaked with faint veins of light. The servants had fled into the mountains. Sarah was gone, her last words a whisper in the wind. Only Cale remained. He rarely spoke. Since the sealing of the veil, something inside him had changed. He no longer cast a shadow. The glow beneath his skin had dimmed, though it never truly faded. He would stand for hours at the shattered balcony, staring out at the horizon where the moon hung cracked and bleeding silver. When I tried to reach for him, the air between us felt heavier, like the bond that connected us had thickened into something fragile and strange. One evening, I found him kneeling by the frozen pool in the courtyard, the same place where I had first seen my reflection twisted by prophecy. The water was still again, but faint light moved beneath its surface, swirling like trapped stars. "You shouldn't be out here," I said softly. He didn't look up. "You sound like Sarah." She would have said the same. He smiled faintly, but there was no joy in it. "The wolves have stopped singing," he murmured. "Do you hear it? The silence. It's louder than any howl." I knelt beside him. "They'll return. The land will heal." He turned his face toward me, and the look in his eyes made my chest ache. "You don't understand. The veil didn't just close, Lyra, it changed everything. The living and the dead, the gods and the cursed, they're all shifting. I can feel it." "What are you saying?" "That I'm not what I was." He reached out and pressed his hand to mine. The touch was cold, but not the cold of death, it was the stillness before movement, the quiet before a storm. "Your fire remade me," he said. "But it also took something. My immortality is bound to you now. When your fire fades, I fade too." My throat tightened. "Then I'll never let it fade." He smiled again, softer this time. "You can't promise that." I wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. The truth of it settled heavy between us. The bond that had saved us might one day kill us both. That night, as I lay awake in the half-collapsed chamber, I dreamt again of the woman from before, Vera. She stood beneath a tree of silver roots, her white gown soaked with starlight. "You've done what I could not," she said. Her voice was the echo of my own. "But the fire is not meant to sleep. It will call again." I reached for her. "What do I do?" "Choose." When I woke, the first rays of false dawn stretched across the ruined floor. Cale stood at the window, watching. The light touched him, but it didn't warm him. "There is no sun," he said quietly. I looked out beside him. He was right. The light that spread across the mountains was pale and cold, neither sunlight nor moonlight, something between. "What is it?" I whispered. "The world resetting," he said. "A dawn that never was." We stood together in that quiet half-light, and though it was beautiful, it felt like standing on the edge of something vast and uncertain. Days passed. We rebuilt what we could. The wolves returned in small numbers. The snow melted from the courtyard, revealing veins of silver that pulsed faintly beneath the stone. Cale began to grow distant again. He spent his nights in the throne room, the only place where the ancient runes still glowed faintly. One night, I followed him. He stood before the throne, the firelight painting shadows across his face. "You shouldn't be here," he said without turning. I could say the same. He turned then, his eyes weary but soft. "I keep hearing their voices. The ones we sealed. They whisper in the cracks of the veil. They want out. You said it was closed. It is. But the boundary is thin now. And his voice broke. I can hear her. Ha! Vera." My heart stopped. "You mean me?" "No," he said. Not you. The part of you that was her. The echo left behind. He took a step closer. She's calling to me, Lyra. She says the fire and the shadow were never meant to stay in this world. That one of us must return. I shook my head. She's wrong. You're not leaving me again. He brushed his fingers along my cheek. You think I want to? Every part of me wants to stay. But I can feel the balance unraveling. The fire doesn't belong here, not fully. Neither do I. Tears burned behind my eyes. Then take me with you. He smiled, faint and sorrowful. You are the dawn now. You must remain. Before I could protest, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to my forehead. His touch burned cold. Kale. Sure, he smiled. I will not vanish. Not truly. The bond flared between us, bright and painful. I gasped as light burst from my chest, and when I opened my eyes, he was gone. All that remained was the echo of his voice, soft and distant. Even the coldest heart remembers warmth. The silence that followed was unbearable. Outside, the dawn burned brighter, spreading silver fire across the horizon. It was beautiful. It was empty. And I was alone. Years passed. The world slowly healed. The storms lessened, the ice retreated, and from the cracks in the snow grew flowers unlike any that had ever existed, white petals veined with light, glowing softly even in darkness. They called them moonfire blooms. The people who had once fled returned in small numbers, drawn by whispers of safety, by rumors of a queen who ruled the north with wolves of flame. They called me the White Flame Queen. I ruled from the remnants of Irath, now a palace of both frost and fire. The walls gleamed with threads of light, half warm, half cold. The wolves roamed freely, their eyes bright as stars. The world beyond the mountains had begun to thrive again. But the nights were never truly dark anymore. The sky was always tinged with silver, the mark of the sealed veil. And sometimes, when the wind was right, I still heard the echo of his voice. Kale. He had become legend, a whisper carried in the snow. The people said the Shadow King had given his life to save the realm, that he had melted into the moonlight and become one with the wolves. But I knew better. He was still here. I could feel him in every breath of winter, every flicker of frost on my skin. The bond we shared had not died, it had changed. On nights when the moon turned full, the sky split faintly along its old scar, bleeding silver light. And in that light, a figure always appeared at the edge of the forest. He never spoke, never came closer than the tree line, but I knew him. His eyes still burned silver. I would stand on the balcony, wrapped in the cloak he had once given me, and whisper into the cold, "You waited. So will I." The years did not touch me. The fire in my veins kept me young, my skin unmarked by time. The people called it a blessing. I called it the curse of memory. One winter, a child born in the valley below was brought to me. Her hair was white, her eyes pale blue. She bore a faint mark on her wrist, a crescent within a circle. When I touched her, the mark flared briefly. "The blood continues," I whispered. That night, as the snow fell thick and silent, I dreamed again. I stood beneath the silver tree from before, its roots glowing softly in the dark. Kale was there, waiting. "You kept your promise," he said. "I never broke it." He reached out his hand. "It's not over, Lyra. The veil breathes still. The world will need you again." I took his hand, but when I looked down, I saw fire spreading through my fingers, bright, alive, endless. "Then I'll burn again," I said. He smiled. "And I'll follow the flame." When I woke, the air in the chamber shimmered. The shadow of his shape lingered beside my bed, faint but real. The wolves outside howled in unison, their voices rising to the broken moon. I rose, walked to the balcony, and looked up at the silver sky. The wind carried snow across the mountains, glowing faintly in the light. Somewhere out there, beyond sight, beyond death, Kale waited. And I, Lyra, last of the moonborn, queen of fire and shadow, waited for him too. Because love, like the moon, was never truly gone. It only changed shape. And when the world's next dawn came, we would rise again, flame and frost, light and night, forever entwined. If this tale of fire and shadow pulled you into its world, don't let the story end here. Hit that subscribe button, light up that notification bell, and join our growing realm of fantasy lovers. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you choose? The fire that saves, or the shadow that stays? More worlds are waiting, and our next story might just be darker, deeper, and even more unforgettable. Until then, keep your fire burning, and your shadows close.